And just as a little bit of a setup for today's session, let's all agree that no one actually neatly fits into generational definitions. We were just remarking how the youngest of us is the best dressed today, so. With that in mind, I wanted to start off a little bit where the previous panel picked up around what the younger generation feels and what the older generation feels about work, and maybe kick it off with you.
I'm representing, I guess, the older generation here. But I have to admit, I'm at the age of baby boomer and Generation X. As you see, I'm expert now on the generations, which is I'm not, actually.
You look no older than a millennial.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. You make my day now.
Shukri, I'd like to start by asking you, having observed all of these generations, what do you see as the definition of success in the workplace, and how has that evolved?
I mean, you are asking that one from the generational perspective, I guess. When I was started into the company 35 years ago, Mercedes-Benz, you were looking for a company to stay with. I mean, the company where you can climb the ladders and move up and stay loyal to that company was the main idea of being with a company together. And nowadays, I do see that you seek, first of all, for the right ladders and for the right purpose amongst the young people. This is the main, difference is what I see from today's perspective on the success. Success is to choose the right ladder with the right purpose and right values companies, and then you can climb that one with. But in the past, that wasn't that so important. We were just asking for a company to stay and stay loyal was, from our perspective, was the success.
Bashar, does that resonate in terms of what does success mean?
To answer that question in front of that much wonderful, successful women is not that much easy. So rather than answering it, I want to question it. For me, the answer of success, I don't know the answer of success, by the way. I can only have much more questions. Like, for example, my friend just talked about to climb it in a career. So about it always change by the time and change by the generations. Is it really meaningful to climb it? So that's one of my questions, because it was my mindset. I believe that you have to climb your career, but I think it is not the case now. Maybe not that much meaningful. The main point is, I think, purpose. The people are looking for that mainly in every generation. So the answer, as I said in the beginning, I don't know the answers, but I have lots of questions. What is really success? My personal answer is how I feel it. If I feel happy, if I feel satisfied, and if I feel wealthy, I feel myself successful.
Okay, so on the younger perspective, I think it slightly resonates with what the two gentlemen before me said. I think the younger generation looks at success much more holistically. We're also exposed to a lot of different models through social media, and that exchange shapes how we think. We were also exposed to the difficulties that being loyal to a company brings. We had, the examples of our parents staying loyal to a company, but often getting stressed at home, after work. We see the negative implications of it when we were raised, and we think of success much more holistically as the general happiness that we have in life and the way that you can harmonize work and life. I don't think work-life balance is a thing It's more work-life harmony and finding, well, anyone can have their own work-life harmony, right? And finding that is probably the way that you would see success. For a lot of people, it can mean, obviously, different things. But yeah, everyone has their passions, everyone has their goals, and reaching them in a way that makes your life whole is probably the way that the young people look at it. That's why they tend to put so much emphasis on other things than loyalty, other things than work per se, but more how they can craft their work to fit their life. Yeah, I would say that's the definition of success for young people.
And for you personally?
It's definitely one point where I can agree. I don't want to act like the representative of Gen Z universally. I think Gen Z is very diverse and polarized. If there is one point where I agree with the sentiment of Gen Z, I think this is definitely one of them. There is a lot that comes to being successful, and I think looking at it holistically is the healthy way.
Chris, I'm curious because we had spoken a bit earlier about work-life balance and work-life harmony, as you say, Mikolaj. As you think, balance. As you define for us what success looks like in your perspective, I'd also love to hear your thoughts around that.
I think coming from Australia, Australia's viewed as laid-back workers, sometimes lazy. So, you know, my definition of success is kind of changed since I've become a young father. You know, my priorities are now shifted towards spending time at home as much as I can, not spending time driving to and from work. I've had, you know, white-collar experience and blue-collar experience, and in my blue-collar experience, I travel up to 1,000 kilometres a week in the car just to get to and from sites. So that's not conducive to a relationship and to a family. So I think now my priorities have shifted a lot more towards what benefits my family more than my work life as such. So I try and prioritise, you know, it's no more, having a stay-at-home mother or father is not viable in this current economy. So we both have to work full-time jobs. So, you know, I will do the dinner at night, my wife will do the drop-offs in the morning, I'll do the pickup. So it's more of a shared responsibility, and there's no definition for this is someone's role.
I really appreciate that. I want to maybe double down a bit on the purpose and meaning question that's come up for each of you, particularly in today's world where AI makes it almost impossible for us to switch off. Things are always on, things are moving incredibly fast. And Mikolaj, you come from the generation that is perhaps most intimately familiar with this. But the question, I guess, is, in this sort of world, what does meaningful work, purposeful work look like?
So, to briefly answer your question, I think the output is the most important factor for us. We like meaningful work. We don't just do work for the sake of it. We try to be meaningful about it, see the output, see the outcomes. The younger generation definitely gravitates towards working settings where they can apply their work, where they can see the outputs of their work. In the context of AI, that means to show their personal impact, not just generic output. There's obviously a lot of things that AI can help with and automate. Writing emails. I think there's a lot of, at least in my circle around me, there's a lot of disagreements between the older generation and the younger generation, that the younger generation will not be able to, for example, write an email soon because all of it will be written by AI. And they see it as a very easy skill, right? Like a very basic skill, one that people shouldn't lose. But we see it as, you know, just another thing, just another task that can be optimized. Email is just used for communication purposes, so why don't we have an extra half an hour to do the actual work? Email isn't work, it's friction at the end of the day. So I think doing the real output, doing the real job, and removing the friction is what we gravitate towards as a younger generation.
Is that what meaningful work really is for others?
The meaningful part is quite complex, but what I want to say in the very beginning, I am really jealous about the young generation because they are really being better and better than us because they are adapting very fast and they are not the most part that I am jealous with is they are not imitating us. They find their own way. And while finding their own way, they are really authentic. They listen their voices, their inner voice much more compared to us or the older generations. Because when you get older, it is about for human beings, countries, companies, you build your own empire, you build your own ivory coast or your castle, which means you put your own rules and you believe that these are true norms that everyone has to take into account. However, new generation is not on that side. They really think about their inner voice, their authentic way, and they really believe individually what they need, why they do that. They try to find their purpose even very much earlier than the old generations. This is what I really getting jealous with them.
Meaningful, I mean, to be meaningful for the young generation is, first of all, from our perspective, they like to be heard. They like to create impact. They like to be part of the discussion all the time, and they like to be seen as well. In that regard, if you create space for them that they are seen and understood, then we do believe their motivation, their engagement in the company increases dramatically in that sense. Therefore, for them, what we do understand is to create space, to be also listened, to be heard is the more meaning in addition what you are saying.
For me, and maybe to push back a bit, in a world where you have autonomous weapons, where you have constant genocide, where you have famine, where you have increasing inequality, a lot of the younger generation are looking to have meaning in what they do on a day-to-day basis at work. Particularly in the industrial sector, I guess going back to both of you, how do you attract some of the younger generation that are looking for meaning through their work?
It is a very hard question, but on the other hand, this is the question I think every morning we ask ourselves before going to work. How we will attract today the young generation. I think we are in a time zone which everything will never look like in the past and in the future. This is a very rapidly and intensively changing time, which means we have to find our own way. What I think from a young generation, how to attract them, I need to understand them. But to understand them is not only to listen, to live like them, to really try to look from their angle. Because I saw some research for the young generation, they think that 80%, they think that they are loyal and they are respectful. But we criticize they are not loyal and they are not respectful from corporate perspective. So there is something wrong. I think the wrong thing is what we call loyal or respect is different for them. They think they are loyal, but it doesn't mean that they have to be loyal to our corporate rules or the way of old working. So they have their own rules, own way, which we have to respect. then we cannot say that we are much more loyal or respectful compared to the young generation. The meaning is changing. That's why we need to understand them. For example, there is not a single answer anymore, such as what is the best way of working for white collars in a finance industry, 5 days in an office or hybrid working or out of office. So there is no specific answer for that, unfortunately. Or will AI replace all white collars or 30% of white collars? There is no specific answer for that. There will be an alignment.
And I guess I want to even double click on the meaning of meaningful in the context of how the world is changing today. And I feel both Miklay and Shukri, you have some thoughts. I can see it coming out.
No, I was just going to add to that one, saying, okay, how we can attract the young generations into our, working environment is the question that we are asking frequently, because, AI is changing the world, yes, understood, but we are, working with people and with generations and mixed generations in the organizations. In that regard, currently 15% of our organization represents the Generation Z. And at the same time, we are thinking as well, okay, how we can create work and life balance, because we know it's important for that generation. And how we can give them purpose as well in the organization is the main questions in our mind. Most of the time, how we are encouraging their career path is to offer them lifelong learning patterns. That means how they like to develop themselves is most important thing during their next journey. And we are creating for them spaces where they can learn each day something new, and they can also engage in digital or physical platforms that they can fulfill themselves. For example, we do have in our company reverse mentoring, and then that means a young Generation Z sits in a weekday, at least in a month, one day together with my generation or elderly generation to learn from each other. And when we see the impact of those together comings, then we see that they are more fulfilled and they are more engaged and they are more with the adaptation of the new things in the company. Therefore, they are seeking also flexibility, work-life balance. Those subjects we are handling all the time with. As you said, there is no 100% certain answer, but we do see and hear their requests, and accordingly we adapt ourselves as well from time to time. For example, 1 month distance working in a summertime is our examples. But in that regard, we know that the new generation expects different engagement methodologies and different attractions in the new companies. In that regard, we are preparing ourselves as well. Hopefully it helps.
Thank you.
So what I wanted to add to that is that there is a lot of discussion about loyalty, about contribution. I think for young generation, loyalty is not a thing. It doesn't exist. We don't think loyalty. We think dedication. When we think about being serious about a company, staying there, contributing to the company, we think dedication, we don't think loyalty. We've seen layoffs at home, our parents getting laid off, even after 20 plus years of dedication and loyalty. So for us, it's just not something we think about. We think dedication. Also, I just want to set the stage for it. Gen Z is the most polarized generation so far, and obviously generations are quite fluid. There is no strict rules between one another, but as a result, politically, economically, worldview-wise, work approach-wise, it's a very polarized generation. And it's pretty much 50-50 split, 49-51. Half don't care, they can do any job It's entirely separate from their lives. It's something that they do, not who they are, period. The other half is very pragmatic about it and indeed reasons that, okay, 40-hour work weeks, probably a significant portion of my life, I will sort of include it as part of my personal identity. And those are the ones that you can tap into legitimately with purpose, with contribution opportunities. What is a mystery also for us as young people, we don't know what to do about the other half, who completely separate one and the other, because that's the way they see the harmony. Yeah, it's also an open question for us. It's a tough one.
We don't know what to do about the other half of our generation as well, so I don't think that's Chris, I'm really curious because you've observed multiple generations,
Yes.
and you've also observed evolution for you in your personal learning journey.
I think incentives change as you get older as well. You know, when I was a bit younger, I was more focused on doing as much as I can, not to work as many hours as I can. But now I'm more incentivized to earn as much money as I can within reason. I don't want to sacrifice 15 hours a day to a job that I don't like to then bring food and sacrifice at-home life. I think, you know, there's a limit to where you'll take less money to be happier. I think that would apply to most generations where, you know, there's a certain limit of money where you'll sacrifice your happiness to make that money, but it has to be quite a substantial amount for me to want to sacrifice spending time at home. And I prioritise spending time at home, and most of my workmates would say the same thing. You know, if I was told the incentives were, if we finish the job on time, we get to go home, or stay longer and earn more money, 80% would say, let's finish the job and get out of here as quick as we can. So I think that's changing, the shift from my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, who would just hunker down and try and earn as much money as they can. But with the roles shifting at home as well, it's more of a 50-50 split. I think you can't expect someone to pull more weight than the other. So you try and do your best to make, you know, your wife or your husband happy, so there's less friction at home. Otherwise, that transfers into work.
Yeah, just a small point to add to that. I'm careful about doing generalizations about the younger generation, but one that I can definitely make is based on a quote from Nigel Marsh, that we completely reject the notion of going to work that we hate to enable us to buy things we don't need to impress people we don't like. This is something we've seen, and this is something that we completely reject. And in that sense, finding the purpose, finding the fit is everything, in a way.
Yeah, it's the question of, do you build your work around your life, or do you build your life, as we used to, around your work? I also wanted to encourage the audience. I mean, it's not often that we get men in these forums, but also men of different generations. So if anyone does have any questions to the panelists, Irene does. I would love to hear them.
No, it's not complex. I want to ask these two. How do you define career? Each one. Career, in the old definition, we know it. How do you, at this point in your life, view a career?
In a way, it's a very simple question, but one that's, as you probably know, difficult to answer. But I want to base it on my first, let's say, argument, or my first point, that we look at it holistically. So a career isn't necessarily limited to only performance at work and grinding through the ladders of the very high hierarchies at different workplaces. We prefer flatter hierarchies normally, where we can show our skills. That might be because we're young and it's difficult to, at a young age, to climb the ladder, so to speak. But it's about finding your place. It's about doing what you like. There's those two axes. First of all, you have the enjoyment of the activity of working, and then there is the satisfaction afterwards. And we don't neglect one and the other. We normally tend to seek balance in both and progression opportunities. And then seeing, okay, how does it fit with the rest of my life? Did I travel enough? Did I see enough? Did I have enough fun? Did I progress enough? Did I learn enough? There is like an implicit curve that you have along the timeline where you have those multiple goals that you try to reach, to achieve. And I feel like that progression all across those different life axes is what we see as a career. That grows your respect, your experience, all of those different things that you live in life. That also means setting early expectations. I think my generation, you might think, okay, yeah, young people have no clue where they're going to see themselves in 10 years. Oh no, they do. Not because this is where they will end up, but that's because where they want to end up. And this can be 5 different things, but they will be imagining and planning out all 5 of them. That's more or less how it looks, and that's the path that we see as career, if that answers the point.
Chris, does that resonate, or do you have a different perspective?
I think career is quite a broad term now. I've changed careers a few times in my life already. And sometimes it's scary to jump into a different area, but the end goal was always kind of the same. And if the career got me to that end goal, then it didn't matter what my route was in that regard. So I think, I'd still want, again, it's a different perspective from me because I prioritize family over work more so. I come from a single mother who raised me, so she did everything she could to make sure that I had a good nurtured experience, sacrificed a lot. So my whole idealistic has changed from that of my friends. Especially out of all my group of friends, only one parents have stayed together out of 10 couples. So it's quite a common factor, but most of my friends were raised by their fathers. So I've had a bit of a more holistic approach to life, and I will sacrifice certain things to make sure that my family, whether it be my mother, my sisters, my niece and nephews, or my son, are looked after as much as I can. So if that career can get me there, then I'll do that.
And for you gentlemen, how has the definition of career shifted? What was it 20 years ago, and what is it for you today?
Career shift 20 years ago. Career means 20 years ago to come to the, higher level was the main objective, as said at the beginning. And now the career shift is, okay, as I said at the beginning as well, to be relevant, to impact, to create impact, to be, part of the organization and feel associated with the organization is the main objective nowadays. And do purposeful things are the main objective. Therefore, the career has changed in a different way. And as we know, all these C-seats and higher hierarchical places are rare and limited, and to climb to that one is also not that easy anymore. In that regard, people want to feel themselves as a part of the organization. In that regard, you have to do everything that you can include all this young generation to the organization is the main career development for them.
And for you personally?
As I said, 15% of the organization is Generation Z. I'm trying to learn from them a lot every day. I have 2 kids. One is 22. It's representing also daily at home the generation as well. And we have our fights, you know that one. And another one, I have another kid, 17 years old. It's a millennial. I do see also the differences amongst them. In that regard, it's a lifelong journey. As I said, it is a learning curve. And every day you do receive from them another information that you have to tackle. But at the same time, they are asking for space, understanding, and flexibility most of the time, which I am offering. I'm not asking to come at 12 at home anymore in that regard. That's that type of stuff. But this is how it is.
Maybe I need to accept that career as a word became a little bit old-fashioned. It was too much. Maybe it was our main targets in our life previously. Now it is not the case. We have to admit that. We have to get used to that because career is for young generation, for my opinion, to develop themselves. For the old generation, career was to do what is requested. So it was very simple. Now it is not that much simple. For my opinion, the main problem is corporates are not that much ready for that kind of request. My young friend explained it very well. However, I see the gap between the corporates and the generation. And it is not the generation's problem, it is the corporate's problem. Because we are complaining every time about the talent gap. We are saying that we cannot meet the potential in the candidates, and we are looking for the answer in the candidates or in talents. And I think that's the main mistake that we do. I have a dream, by the way, when I was listening to my younger colleagues. Every time we want to go back to the organization, younger generations, to ask them and to try to understand them. I think the best way should be, for example, in my company, management team or the executive team can discuss internally about what they are expecting and how do they understand the young generation, how they define the new work environment. Then we can go back to the younger generation and ask their feedback. What is the gap? How we discuss, how we understand, and what is our mistakes or different opinions. I think this will make sense because other way around, every time we talk, we ask, we receive the answer, we criticize or accept, but we comment. It is not easy to understand them in that way, for my opinion.
One of the things we see increasingly as we talk about careers and as we live longer lives, Chris, you were telling me about a lady that is over 100 and is quite active, is that we're not seeing one career, we're seeing 2 careers and 3 careers, and it's becoming even an imperative, which has serious implications for the younger generations because it's not just the 20 years ahead that they need to think of. For me, that has been one of the biggest assumptions that turned out to be incorrect in how I viewed my career. I'm curious to hear from the different generations. What has been, your reaction to this? And if you feel this is not a particularly interesting topic, what has been the assumption that you found has changed the most or has been the most incorrect?
I mean, as you said, there is no one single company anymore that you are working for 30, 35 years. Then you have to just adapt, learn every year, every quarter actually new things. And as we said from the beginning, loyalty doesn't matter anymore. And then you have to be prepared for a couple of life careers and in a different ways of learnings as well. Some learnings, as we said, digitally, some learnings maybe in the company, but in different companies, you will have 5, 6, 7, or maybe 10 times different careers. That is the new way of life. And this requires also adaptation, learning adaptation. You have to be fast learner nowadays in order to stay relevant, as we said, in this new career paths. And therefore, the young generation, what I see is also looks for different sources of income, not only from one way, one company, and different ways of, because one income doesn't, fulfill their expectations nowadays. And in that regard, I do see different companies, different channeled incomes is the new way of working in the future, and how the generation is going to tackle with that one will be the main challenge in the upcoming years.
and it could be it doesn't fulfill their income requirements. It also could be that it doesn't fulfill their interest requirements.
That's true as well. That's true as well.
So to build on that, I think, especially the income part, Gen Z is also statistically by far the toughest negotiating generation, and also for a reason. Some people see it as being delusional, but for us, it's either you want to be dedicated. It's a very polarized generation, and for me, the biggest differentiator is the assumption on the assumptions topic that work has to work for you to work. And that split divides the people into, okay, I'm employed, but I treat it as a B2B contract. This is my job description. Those are the tasks I perform. That's it. After that, it's all my life. Or you have people really putting effort into it, and then they are being driven, etc., etc. So I think that's the main assumption that we had. Yeah.
I think, with the careers now, there's no loyalty from companies, which is why in some situations loyalty from companies isn't being shown to the employees, so the employees are now looking for other avenues. With especially the AI coming through and the layoffs, especially in Australia, there's a lot of companies that are reducing their staff by quite a bit just because AI is able to take the brunt work of all those roles. So if you're an employee looking at someone who's a higher up saying, well, they're not showing me loyalty, then I'm not going to return the favour, because most of the time, in my experience, especially in the blue-collar work, the only way I've made big jumps in pay is when I've switched companies. The longer I stay at the one spot, the more stagnant my income remains, whereas I can jump to another company and get a decent increase just from jumping ship. And I think that's changed from my grandparents' role, my parents' role, is where everyone would stay at a company for a longer period of time because it's what they're used to. But now, majority of my friends have all swapped jobs 5, 6, 7 times now, and in mid-30s. So there's nothing holding us to one spot. If another company meets what we want, then we'll happily go to the other company.
Yeah, exactly. And just not to use empty words, there's 2 very strong points that we can build here. First of all, 2019, not a fortunate year for the world, but unfortunately, this is how it is. The great reshuffling. You can see how much more Gen Zers started switching jobs. For Gen X, the rate of job hopping went up by 9%. For the Millennials, 24%. For Gen Z, 134%. So those are the gaps that kind of build it. And you may ask, oh, okay, but how does it help me to retain younger employees in corporate settings? What became even more prevalent is what's known as portfolio employment. So even if it's a big corporation, you have to try to sort of not turn a young person into a small cog in a big machine, but make them work on different projects. So what's very common among younger people in bigger organizations is that they work 10% on this project, 20% that project, etc., etc., so that overall they feel like they have an impact across the organization, because in the bigger ones, that's probably the toughest job for the managers to actually provide the variety, the value, the visibility of the value at least.
What I'm hearing is we're all changing together. The values fundamentally remain the same. Purpose is important to each of us, and each of us have continued to want to learn and evolve and contribute. And I think that's one of the things that we particularly appreciate about being in the workforce. A question, or shall we do a closing round? We end. Okay, I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Thank you, Irene, for having us, and wishing you a wonderful rest of the conference.
Thank you.